Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
We love to do these. We find a really interesting post online and dissect it and see what we can learn from it.
I love it. Yeah.
And this one, um, I think a lot of people will relate to this. It's all about mixed signals.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah.
You think things are going one way and then
Yeah, and it's like, what's the truth? Like what is really happening here? So in this particular Reddit post, this guy's talking about how he went on a date with this girl and
Okay.
it went really well, and then she invites him to a party.
Oh, nice.
So he's thinking, cool, like this is, things are progressing. We're having a good time.
Yeah, she's interested.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
he gets to the party and she completely ignores him.
That's so awkward.
So
Shame.
awkward and confusing, right? What do you do with that? So naturally, the internet explodes with theories.
Of course.
And one of them is this idea of a shit test. Have you heard of this before?
Yeah. Yes, I have heard of the shit test. So this is, people use this term where it's like someone is deliberately, being difficult or, putting up some kind of like a roadblock to see how you'll react.
Right. So it's like a test almost.
Yeah. It's like, are you going to be, are you going to freak out about this? Or are you going to, just kind of like roll with it and, whatever.
And I guess if you pass the test, you get the girl or whatever.
Right. Exactly. You get the prize.
What do you think of this whole concept?
Honestly, I think it's thrown around way too much.
Okay.
And it's used to kind of, there are times where I'm sure it is happening, but I think it's often an oversimplification of,
Yeah.
way more complex.
Dynamics.
Yes.
So what are some of the dynamics at play that maybe people aren't considering when they just jump to the shit test conclusion?
Well, sometimes, people talk about breadcrumbing,
Okay.
right? So this idea that, someone will give you just enough attention,
Right.
kind of keep you interested, but they have no intention of actually like, yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw a little breadcrumb out there to lead you on this path, but really,
Right.
there's nothing at the end of the rainbow.
Right. Exactly. There's no loaf of bread.
Yeah. There's no pot of gold. It's just like
one little crumb.
yeah, like a stale crumb.
No. And so, it's possible that, maybe she was doing that either intentionally or unintentionally.
So maybe she wasn't like fully invested, but she also wasn't ready to completely shut it down.
Right.
Interesting.
And we see that a lot, in these early stages of dating where people aren't really sure what they want.
Right.
Or they're still keeping their options open.
So what are some of the other theories that people had about why she was ignoring him?
Well, some people thought, maybe she was trying to set him up with her friend.
Oh, that's interesting.
The friend that was flirting with him.
Right. Okay. So like a weird matchmaking attempt.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's like, oh, you're not for me, but maybe you're for my friend.
Right. And I guess like some people are just not very direct about those things.
Yeah. Some people are very indirect and they kind of go about things in a roundabout way.
Right. What about the simplest explanation? Maybe she just like wasn't into him anymore.
That's always possible too.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes people's feelings change, and it could be that she genuinely liked him on the date, but then realized that, it wasn't as strong of a connection as she thought.
Yeah. Or, between the date and the party, she met someone else.
That's true too.
It happens.
Yeah. And that's something that's really hard to accept sometimes, especially in dating when you think things are going well and then suddenly they're not.
Right. And I think sometimes, we get so caught up in trying to decode the other person's behavior.
Yes.
That we forget that they may be going through their own,
Absolutely.
uncertainties.
Yeah. And, it highlights the importance of communication.
Right.
And being honest with each other about, where we're at and what we're feeling.
Yeah, because I think ghosting or sending these mixed signals, it seems like the easier option in the moment, but it actually just leads to more hurt feelings and confusion in the long run.
Right. Exactly. You're avoiding a difficult conversation in the short term, but then you're creating like a bigger mess in the long term.
Okay, so before we dive deeper into the communication piece of this,
Okay.
I tell you what happened next.
Okay. I'm on the edge of my seat.
So the original poster added an update to this post,
Okay.
and he said that he ended up making out with one of the girl's other friends at the party.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know.
That changes things.
Right. So what do you think is going on here? Is this like
I don't know.
shit test validated?
Maybe. But then again, we're still only getting his perspective.
Right.
We don't really know like what was going on in her head or even what the dynamics were between her and her friends.
Yeah, we're missing a lot of information.
Yeah. There could be a whole backstory here that we don't know.
Right. And plus it was a party.
That's true.
People's inhibitions are lower.
Right.
There's music, Maybe there's alcohol involved.
Right.
So maybe it's not, we don't need to overanalyze every single detail.
Yeah, sometimes things just happen,
Yeah.
especially in those kinds of environments.
Right. So it's like,
Finding the balance,
yeah,
between like reading too much into things and also not dismissing, potential red flags.
right. So,
Yeah.
okay, so we've got this confusing party situation where he makes out with one of her other friends.
Mhm.
But there was another comment on this thread that really stood out to me.
Oh, okay.
And this commenter said he had a really similar experience.
Mhm.
He went on a date. Things went amazing. She invited him to a party.
Okay.
But then he walks in and finds her making out with someone else.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
That's even worse
It's brutal, right?
than just being ignored.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this commenter, like, I'm out of here.
Right.
He didn't stick around.
Yeah, good for him.
Right. So do you think there's like a fundamental difference between the girl who ignored the guy at the party and the girl who was like openly making out with someone else?
I think it's possible that the motivations are different.
Okay.
Maybe the first girl was just kind of ambivalent, like she didn't really know what she wanted, whereas the second girl, maybe she was intentionally trying to send a message.
Yeah, like I'm moving on.
Yeah, or like I'm not interested.
Right. Or maybe they just have different communication styles.
That's true too.
Right.
Some people are more avoidant and some people are more direct.
Right. And it's all about like, cultural norms and individual personalities.
Exactly.
Like what one person thinks is a clear sign, another person's like whatever.
Totally.
It means nothing to me.
And that's why communication is so important.
Yeah.
You can't just rely on these subtle cues or assume that someone's on the same page as you.
Right. We have to actually talk to each other.
Exactly.
So amidst all the drama and confusion of this Reddit post, there was one comment that really like warmed my heart.
Good.
This person was talking about how they'd had a string of bad dating experiences,
Okay.
like really painful ones.
Mm.
But ultimately, it led them to their soulmate.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I know.
I love that.
Yeah, and this person even mentioned experiencing like physical and sexual abuse in past relationships,
Yeah.
which is, incredibly difficult to overcome.
Of course.
But they found their way to a healthy, loving relationship.
Wow, that's so inspiring.
I know. And it just shows you that like even when things feel really tough,
Yeah.
there's always hope.
Right.
You can find love.
Absolutely. And it speaks to the resilience of the human spirit
Yeah.
and the transformative power of love.
It's like the phoenix rising from the ashes.
I love that.
It's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
So it's so easy to get discouraged by, bad dates or toxic relationships. But this commenter's story, it's just a reminder that like there are good people out there.
Yeah.
And finding true love is possible.
Absolutely. It's about having the courage to keep putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
even when you've been hurt.
Right. And to believe that you deserve a love that is healthy and respectful and fulfilling.
Exactly. And that's such an important message because I think sometimes we settle
Yeah.
for less than we deserve because we're afraid of being alone or we're afraid of starting over.
Right. And it's like, no, you're worthy of a love that truly lights you up.
Yes. You deserve to be with someone who celebrates you and supports you and makes you feel safe and loved.
Absolutely. So I think this brings us to a really important point, which is the importance of self-awareness in dating.
Yes.
So before we dive deeper into that, let's just take a moment to remind our amazing listeners
Yes.
that if you're enjoying this deep dive,
Yes.
you can help us reach even more people by subscribing to Voices of the Soul and leaving us a review. It really makes a difference.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for more insightful discussions on relationships, personal growth, and all things soul searching, be sure to check out the Shauna Pelage YouTube channel.
We've got tons of content there that you'll love. Okay, so back to our regularly scheduled deep dive.
Yeah.
Self-awareness in dating.
What does that even mean?
That's a great question.
Let's unpack it
Yes.
after a quick break.
Sounds good. Welcome back, everyone. So we were talking about self-awareness in dating.
Right. Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
But how do we actually, put it into practice?
Especially when you're, in the thick of it.
Right. Exactly. When you're feeling all the feels.
Yeah, you're, excited or you're disappointed or whatever. It's like, how do I actually,
How do I bring in the self-awareness?
Yeah.
Well, I think it starts with understanding, why are you dating in the first place?
Okay, so motivations.
Yeah.
So are you looking for a serious relationship? Are you looking for something casual? Or are you just looking for validation?
Exactly. What are you hoping to get out of this experience?
Okay, so gotta be honest with yourself about that.
Yeah. And it's okay to be looking for any of those things.
Yeah, but you have to be clear with yourself about it.
Yeah, because if you're not clear with yourself about it, then you're not going to be clear with the other person.
Right. And then you end up in these situations where there's like misaligned expectations.
Right.
And someone ends up getting hurt.
Yeah, it's just almost like setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly.
If you're not really clear on like what you're even wanting.
And I think another big part of self-awareness is understanding your own attachment style.
Right. So like, are you anxious? Are you avoidant? Are you secure?
Yeah, exactly. Because that can really influence how you react in dating situations.
Totally. Like if you tend to be anxious,
Mm-hmm.
you might be more prone to overanalyzing everything.
Oh my gosh.
Like every text message, every little interaction, it's like, oh my God, what does this mean?
Right. Or you're assuming the worst case scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're avoidant, you might be more likely to like pull away when things start to get too close.
Right. Or like sabotage the relationship
Yeah.
before it even really gets started.
Exactly. So it's really helpful to understand like, okay, this is my tendency.
Yeah.
This is how I tend to react in relationships.
And then maybe you can like catch yourself
Exactly.
and be like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm doing that thing again.
Like, am I spiraling right
Yeah.
now?
Right.
Is this really about the situation or is this about my own past experiences?
Totally. And so we've talked about motivations. We've talked about attachment styles. What else is there when it comes to self-awareness in dating?
Well, another big one is knowing your values and your deal breakers.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, what are the non-negotiables for you?
Exactly. What are the things that you absolutely cannot compromise on in a relationship?
Okay, so give me some examples. Like, what are some common deal breakers?
Well, it could be anything, really. It could be religious beliefs,
Oh,
political views, lifestyle choices,
right.
whether or not you want kids.
Yeah, like those big picture things.
Exactly. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the initial attraction
Yeah.
and overlook those things.
Yeah, you're like, oh, but he's so cute.
Exactly. But in the long run,
Those are the things that are really going to matter.
right. So it's almost like better to like address that stuff up front.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Than to like invest a bunch of time and energy.
It'd be like, oh, wait,
Right.
this is a fundamental incompatibility.
And then you have to like break up and it's all this heartache.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got to know our values, know our deal breakers.
Yes.
This is all part of self-awareness. And then what about boundaries?
Boundaries. Oh, my gosh. That's a huge one.
It's such a buzzword these days. Like everyone's talking about boundaries.
Oh,
but
yeah.
what does that actually mean in the context of dating?
So boundaries are essentially like the limits you set to protect your own well-being and your emotional space.
Okay, so it's like, what are you comfortable with and what are you not comfortable with?
Exactly. And it's about communicating that to the other person.
So it's like being assertive and saying no to things that don't feel right for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's about respecting your own needs
Yeah.
and not compromising them just to please someone else, which can be hard.
It can be really hard, especially when you're, trying to make a good impression.
Yeah, you want to be agreeable.
Right.
You don't want to rock the boat.
Yeah. But ultimately, setting boundaries shows self-respect.
Right.
And it attracts people who are capable of respecting those boundaries.
So it's like it weeds out the people who aren't a good match for you anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if someone's not respecting your boundaries, that's like
That's a big red flag.
a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Get out of there.
Run for the hills.
Yeah, because I don't have time for this.
And it shows a lack of respect for your needs
Right.
and your wishes.
Okay, so what are some practical tips for like how to actually set boundaries in dating?
Well, I think it starts with being aware of your own limits.
Oh,
Like, what are the behaviors or situations that make you feel uncomfortable?
okay.
And then it's about communicating those limits clearly and directly.
So like using I statements.
Yes,
Like I feel uncomfortable when.
exactly. Or I need this, or I'm not okay with that.
Okay, so like, for example, if you're not comfortable with someone texting you constantly throughout the day,
Right.
that's a boundary you can set.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
could say, like, I really appreciate you thinking of me, but I prefer not to text all day long.
Right?
I like to focus on my work, or, I need some space.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you're not comfortable with someone pressuring you to move faster physically than you're ready for,
Right.
that's another boundary.
And you can just say like, hey, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah,
Like, please respect my space.
exactly. And it's okay if someone doesn't like that.
Right.
It's okay if they walk away.
Yeah. You're not for everyone and not everyone's for you.
Right. And that's fine. You don't have to be compatible with everyone.
Okay, so we've got to be aware of our limits.
Yeah.
We've got to communicate our boundaries.
Yeah.
And what about intuition?
Yes. Intuition. That gut feeling.
That like little voice inside.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's telling you something's off.
Yeah.
Or something's not quite right.
I feel like I've ignored my intuition so many times, and
Yeah.
then later I'm like, oof.
Oh my gosh, me too.
I should have listened to myself.
Yeah.
But how do you actually learn to trust your gut, especially when, like, dating is so emotional?
It's so emotional. Right? And I think it's about bringing in mindfulness.
Okay.
So start paying attention to those subtle sensations in your body.
What do you mean?
Like, do you feel butterflies in your stomach?
Right.
Is there tightness in your chest?
Okay.
Do you feel a sense of ease or unease around this person?
So it's like paying attention to your physical sensations.
Exactly. Your body is giving you information.
Okay.
And the more you practice mindfulness, the more you'll start to recognize the difference between like excitement and anxiety.
Interesting.
Or between genuine connection and just like superficial charm.
So if you're like feeling a sense of dread before a date or like a pit in your stomach when you're with someone.
Yes. Pay attention to that.
That's your intuition.
That's your intuition screaming at you.
Like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
So it's like having this like internal compass.
I love that analogy.
That's always pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah. And just like any compass, your intuition needs to be calibrated.
Right.
Trusted.
Okay, so I love this idea of like intuition as an internal compass.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. So as we're kind of wrapping up this part of our deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways for listeners when it comes to self-awareness in dating?
I think the biggest takeaway is that self-awareness is an ongoing journey.
Yeah?
It's not like you arrive at a destination and you're like, okay, I'm self-aware.
I got it.
I'm good to go.
Right.
It's about continually checking in with yourself.
Right.
Understanding your patterns.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries. Trusting your intuition.
And remembering that you deserve to be in relationships that are healthy and respectful and fulfilling.
Exactly. And that starts with understanding and honoring yourself.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the role of past experiences in shaping our self-awareness in dating?
That's a great question, and I think it's a perfect segue into our next segment.
Okay, so we're back and ready to unpack this idea of, how our past experiences really shape our approach to dating.
It's so true. Like every relationship we have, whether it's like a whirlwind romance or like a years-long partnership, it leaves its mark on us in some way.
I know for me personally, like past relationships have definitely influenced, my current dating style. Sometimes I find myself overthinking things or like anticipating problems that might not even exist.
That's so common, especially if you've been hurt or betrayed in the past.
Yeah.
It's natural to kind of develop a certain level of caution or even a bit of baggage.
Baggage, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like we're carrying around these invisible suitcases.
Yes.
Filled with all of our past hurts and disappointments.
Totally. And sometimes without even realizing it, we project those past experiences onto new relationships.
Oh, yeah.
So we might anticipate similar patterns or assume the worst based on, what's happened before.
Right. So how do we unpack those suitcases?
That's the question, right?
Yeah, like how do we prevent those old wounds from sabotaging our present relationships?
Well, I think it starts with that self-awareness that we've been talking about.
Right.
Recognizing those patterns from past relationships that are showing up.
So if you notice yourself like constantly questioning your partner's motives or feeling insecure without a valid reason, it might be a sign that those old wounds are resurfacing.
Exactly. And once you identify those patterns, you can start to challenge them.
Okay.
Ask yourself, is this fear based on reality or is this based on something that happened in the past that might not even be relevant to this current relationship?
So it's like separating the facts from the fiction.
Exactly. And I think sometimes those past experiences can actually be valuable learning opportunities.
Okay.
Maybe a past relationship taught you the importance of clear communication or setting boundaries.
Right. So it's like even the painful experiences can ultimately make us better daters.
I think so. It's about reframing those past hurts as opportunities for growth and self-discovery.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Instead of viewing past relationships as failures, we can see them as stepping stones on our path to finding a truly fulfilling relationship.
I love that. And remember, healing takes time.
Yeah.
Be patient with yourself and don't be afraid to seek professional support if you're struggling to move on from past hurts.
Yeah, therapy can be an incredible tool for, unpacking those suitcases and developing healthier patterns in relationships.
Absolutely. And it can provide a safe and supportive space to process those emotions and develop coping mechanisms.
And sometimes even just talking it out with a trusted friend or family member can be helpful.
Yeah, for sure. The key is to find a support system that helps you feel heard and understood.
That makes sense. As we're talking about past experiences, it reminds me of another comment from that Reddit thread. Someone was talking about how they used to attract partners who were emotionally unavailable.
Okay.
But after doing some self-reflection, they realized that they were subconsciously seeking out those types of relationships because they were afraid of intimacy.
Wow, that's a profound insight. And sometimes we're drawn to people who confirm our own, limiting beliefs about ourselves or about relationships.
So it's like if you're constantly finding yourself in relationships with people who are avoidant or emotionally distant, it might be worth asking yourself why you're attracted to that pattern.
Right. Like, what is it about that dynamic that feels familiar or comfortable?
Yeah. And are you subconsciously trying to recreate something from your past?
Exactly. And that can be some deep work.
Yeah. Those are tough questions to ask yourself.
Yeah, but I think they're essential if we want to break free from those unhealthy cycles.
It's like becoming aware of those subconscious patterns so that we can make conscious choices about the kind of relationships we want to create.
Exactly. It's about rewriting the script.
I love that. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of mixed signals and all this craziness,
Yes.
I think it's important to reiterate that dating is a journey,
Yes.
not a destination.
It's not a race to the finish line.
Yeah, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be confusing moments.
Oh,
And maybe even heartbreak along the way.
yes.
But through it all, I think, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So by cultivating self-awareness, setting boundaries, learning from our past experiences, we can navigate the complexities of dating with more confidence and resilience.
Absolutely. And hopefully find a love that is truly authentic and fulfilling.
I love that. And for all of our listeners out there who are on their own dating journeys, just remember, you're not alone.
We're all in this together.
We're all figuring it out as we go.
And if you've enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe to Voices of the Soul for more deep dives into the complexities of life, love, and everything in between.
And don't forget to check out the Shauna Palaj YouTube channel for even more insightful discussions on relationships, personal growth, and living a more soulful life.
Until next time, keep those hearts open, those minds curious, and those souls ignited.